The James Show Podcast.
The ICE walkouts, some more happened this week, and this has got some parents' antennas buzzing because there were walkouts that happened last week. And when the questions were being asked, well, are the kids being punished for this? And the school said, no. Oh, okay. So you're giving them special privileges and allowing them to break the rules for political purposes? They said, no. That's not what we're doing. We're definitely not coordinating it or facilitating it, but we can't stop the kids from walking out. Oh, okay, so they're going to be punished. Sure. That didn't sound very convincing last week. And you have more evidence this week that you were right to be suspicious. The walkouts continue in North Texas.
Hundreds of students walked out of several Dallas ISD high schools yesterday as they protest ICE operations in North Texas. Governor Greg Abbott is demanding any student who skips class face the consequences, including being counted absent.
Now, this comes as residents in Dallas and Tarrant County, many of them have questioned the local law enforcement and their involvement with that federal immigration agency. Natalie Haddad with us in studio this morning with more on the tense meetings as some North Texans are demanding answers about those partnerships.
Yeah, Mark, we start in Tarrant County, where the sheriff's office has been cleared to expand its partnership with ICE. It's what sent the meeting they had last night into a tailspin. Commissioners approved the expansion last night. The vote allows the sheriff's office to accept a $140,000 grant to strengthen its federal partnership beyond its current jail-based agreement with ICE. But the meeting turned contentious, and it did so pretty quickly. More than a dozen people showed up with signs urging commissioners to reject the grant, and at least 2 attendees were asked to leave or they were escorted out.
We can talk here. You said outside. Now you're telling me to keep rolling on. You said outside. I'm outside.
Now, around the same time last night in Dallas, residents pressed the city's police oversight board about interactions with ICE. The scrutiny comes about a month after Police Chief Daniel Como declined to say how often officers encounter ICE agents or what those interactions even look like. Several speakers demanded specifics, concerns some board members appeared to agree with.
These moments get people heard. These moments will get me on the news, but I'm tired of moments. It's time for a damn movement.
Now, these meetings, of course, come amid local and nationwide protests, as we've talked about here on WFAA, and after recent fatal shootings of U.S. citizens by federal immigration agents in Minneapolis. North Texans have also protested plans for a proposed ICE detention facility in Hutchins. I'll send it back to you, Dia.
Boy, isn't that some questionable context? Yes, these walkouts come amid bad actions by ICE. It's almost like justifying it. You can understand why they're doing this. You know what else it comes amid? It comes amid billions of dollars of fraud being stolen by immigrants. It comes across as thousands of victims of violent crimes at the hands of immigrants. It comes across as robberies and rapes and child porn and human trafficking, prostitution, and drug cartels and trafficking in mules and fentanyl. Yeah, there's a little more context you could have put on that to make it at least like slightly less biased. But when you hear that whole run there, what do they give you? 1:40 into their 2-minute segment, they give you the other side of the story. One guy talks for 7 seconds. So this was nothing but a celebration and a support mechanism for the damn protest. Listen, you cannot call yourself the party of law and order. You cannot say, you cannot make any draws or appeals to the Constitution. You cannot call the other side chaos. They want chaos. No, you want chaos. You don't want the laws to be enforced when it comes to immigration, as we've all gone and voted for over and over and over. 80% of us want these deportations to happen in the latest surveys. And since you didn't win at the ballot box, you are the threat to democracy by thwarting the will of the people and demanding that these laws don't be enforced. And you're not going through the proper democratic channels to do it. On top of that, while you're protesting and having your hissy fits, you're also asking for the laws to be ignored and not enforced. And I don't want to say not enforced. I want to say selectively enforced, politically enforced. Because if your kid ditched school to go to the lake, he would get counted absent. If your kid ditched school to go support the Second Amendment or go to some rally where he held up a foam core sign saying, yay, Second Amendment, he would get counted absent. They are demanding special treatment based solely on their political ideology, and they're getting it. And they're getting it from the government at your expense. You are paying for this fraud. All I'm asking is not that the schools lock up your kids and not allow them to protest. But if they are going to protest and they get counted absent, they don't get to make up that work. They get the zero. They get just like if you ditched class and went to the lake. That's all we're asking. You know what? We're asking for equal treatment. Oh, you mean like equality? Oh, my goodness. You mean you're judging people? Here's salty tattooed mama talking about her back and forth with Plano on some of this.
Oops, I did it again. Yeah, I'm about to be the whole problem for Plano ISD. So according to the Texas Education Agency, only 9% of students at Plano Senior High School can read at grade level. I know I had said 11% in a previous video, but that was from 2023 to 2024. Apparently from 2024 to 2025, that number went down to 9. But yet they're graduating 95% of their students. That math don't math, because those two numbers should never exist in the same sentence. That means that 91% of students cannot consistently read, comprehend, analyze, and write at the level a high school diploma is supposed to represent. But hey, and I wish I could blame COVID for the numbers, but I can't, because in 2019, before COVID shutdowns happened, only 10% of Plano senior students met grade level reading standards. So what exactly is happening in Plano ISD? I'm sure the 36% of chronic absenteeism isn't helping. Yeah, you heard that right. That means 1 in every 3 kids are missing weeks and weeks of school. Now let's go ahead and get that liberal pro-education crowd uncomfortable a little bit more. Plano ISD has 3 senior high schools. Same district, same funding, same standards. Plano Senior, 9% reading. Plano West, 9% reading. Plano East, 67% reading. Now, why is there such a dramatic difference between Plano East and the other 2 schools? Maybe that's because Plano West and Plano Senior allow political walkouts to take place. And I know, Plano ISD, you told me that they weren't happening, and then you told me that they get 10 minutes, and then you told me that they weren't allowed, and then they happened anyways. But let's layer some more things in. Like how Plano ISD school board races are technically supposed to be nonpartisan, but local Democrat groups endorse a majority of the trustees currently sitting in charge. And we all know that the Democrats love to tell us how pro-education they are. So explain this to me like I'm part of that 91% of kids from your school that can't read. 2 of the 3 senior high schools have 9% literacy rates while allowing political walkouts during instructional hours. And the one that doesn't allow this seems to be doing just fine. And this is why we want school choice. Because in no logical, common sense, actually educated world does 9% literacy equal 95% graduation.
Oh, I like the sound of that. I just don't think she goes far enough. This is something I've been stressing on the James Show since the first James Show, since the first time I ever talked on radio in 2002. How can anybody graduate if they're not at a 12th grade reading level? That shouldn't even be a thing. How did you get to 12th grade? So school's a farce. Public school is a farce. They don't teach your kids how to read. They don't teach your kids math. They will have secret sex talks with your 8-year-old with obscene material in the library. Oh, they'll teach them that. They'll teach them that ICE is evil, that America sucks, that white people are bad, but not to read. Everything but reading. And I don't understand why there's not just a mob of people with torches and pitchforks demanding we end public schools. How bad does it have to be? Because we talk about separation of church and state like they don't want the 10 Commandments on the wall. They don't allow for any praying or any mention of the Bible. You can't even admit the Bible exists hardly in the curriculum for a public school. So they've managed to take your religion, your ideology, your worldview, and separate it, cleave it from the curriculum at public schools. However, what do they replace that with? If they're not driven by Christianity, if they're not driven by the same worldview, morals, values that you are, what are they driven by? Their religion is the state. So when you go to send your kids to school, you're sending them to what the leftists consider church. And so you have a state property with state-owned buildings, government employees getting taxpayer money, teaching a government-approved curriculum with government administrators. And you wonder why our kids are coming out on Team Blue when they're subjected to this for 13 straight years and then maybe 4, 5, 6 more years of this in college. How long are you going to allow the government to take money from you and indoctrinate the next generation against you. 800-288-9227. There's not a real answer for that. But here's another amateur historian, Tom Hatsis, making an interesting comparison to children protesting.
Know what taking kids to protest reminds me of? The Third Reich. In Germany, during the 1930s, children were forced to go to protests, flag ceremonies, and other public spectacles, brainwashed into seeing these events as joyful civic duty. Attendance was organized through the schools. They normalized the idea that participation was essential to being a good little Yahtzee. Now, today in America, we are seeing violent attacks against kids who refuse to go along with this programming. The Yahtzee state sought to ensure that by the time the child became an adult, her sense of self, morality, and belonging were inseparable from National Socialism. Let's explore that. Here in the States, we use gender ideology to disrupt the child's sense of self, teach her that political violence is moral, and use the cult of inclusion as a replacement for real belonging. Now just swap out National Socialism for democratic socialism, and here we are. The state ensured that schools were centralized and brought into line with Yahtzee ideology through a process called Gleichschaltung, or coordination. Can't have people thinking for themselves. The aim wasn't just to teach beliefs. It was to shape children into Manchurian candidates, like Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Remember, to your professorial and administrative overlords, you are expendable. But please bear in mind, you are also white. There aren't going to be any marches in the streets if your kid gets accidentally shot.
So we had more walkouts in North Texas. Now, they didn't do this at my kid's school out in Bug Tussle. I mean, it's not necessarily that we're better people. What? That was the wrong button. No. This is the Bug Tussle theme. I'm sorry. It's not that we're better. I don't know. I think we probably have an administration and a faculty that's a little more amenable to the worldview of me and you and most of the people that listen to WBAP. Sure. But also, like, one of the reasons they protest is so it can be on the news. That makes it an effective form of propaganda. If they protest and the only people that see it are the few dozen people that happen to drive by while they're out there hooting and hollering and holding signs, that's not nearly as effective as the reach as when the TV station sends someone out there. And so then everyone, when they get home from work and they watch the news at 5 or 6 or 10 o'clock, they see it. Now thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will get the message. That's the effectiveness of the protest. Out in Bug Tussle, no one's going to see it. They're not going to send a TV station. And who's going to see it? Like 14 cows? So this is all about exploiting your position in a government authority over children to push a political agenda against the will of the people who are paying the taxes that fund your paycheck. It's pretty immoral stuff to start with. But it should also bother you that it's never for a cause that you agree with. They're always taking your money and they're using their kids either in the protests or in the indoctrination against you. And then they lie about it. Oh, we're not coordinating. No, we're not coordinating with the cops. No, we're not letting them off the hook. No, we're going to punish them accordingly. No, we didn't say that they could have 10 minutes for free. We're not planning this out. We're not part of the political movement here. Yeah, you are. And they accidentally say things like in Austin, the police chief accidentally admitted that the Austin Police Department is coordinating with Austin ISD when it comes to ICE protests. But it's just for safety, y'all.
And what AISD is doing with their students. I just met with AISD yesterday. We have a monthly meeting with them. We talked about their walkouts. They have several planned throughout this month. So we are in coordination with them. If we have to help with traffic, we'll do those things. So we are in coordination with AISD as well.
Oh, I thought you weren't coordinating. I thought, the dastardly part about this, if this was a private school, I would have very little to say. I would say I disagree with your thoughts on ICE, but I wouldn't be able to say it's immoral or it's wrong or it's exploiting your government position to use taxpayer money to thwart the will of the taxpayers, because that wouldn't be happening. But then they're going to come out and they're coordinating. So now the cops and the independent school district. So now our law enforcement apparatus and our public school apparatus, they're both taking money from you and using it against you. You know how many people want these deportations? It is now above 80%. It's more than 70% of Democrats. So they're doing all this. So the policy preferences of 19% of the population rule the day, so we don't enforce the laws that the rest of us want, so we don't get equal treatment. That's where we run into clearly. Doesn't everyone agree this is immoral? Let's go to Jim in Plano. Hey, Jim, you're on WBAP.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hey, I just got a couple of things for you. I got a brother-in-law works over there at the really, really good reading Plano Senior High. And he's brought it to our attention here that every Friday there's students that are allowed to go to prayer on Fridays. So they're leaving class, they're excused from class, and then they go to prayer. Now, this is a predominantly...
All right, wait, hang on. No. Is this Lutherans that are going to prayer?
It's a predominantly non-Christian based.
Oh, I don't know. My first guess was probably Lutheran, and then second, I think I was going to say Presbyterian, maybe Methodist. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah, anything past, the Episcopalians, you got to worry about them.
Okay, but Jim, what you're bringing up, we're joking about it, but this should really tick everybody off because they actively persecute any semblance of Christianity anywhere in the public sphere when it comes to schooling. But now they're making special accommodations and exceptions for, I thought prayer in school was bad, but no, Jim, what we're learning here, prayer in school is only bad if Christians do it. So now you are getting unequal treatment. You are getting discriminating treatment based on your religion. This is religious discrimination. This is a violation of Civil Rights Act, and I guess the 14th Amendment could get rolled up in there somehow because that seems to be one of the go-tos for these people. But what you're pointing out isn't a joke. Exactly.
I mean, you can see what happened over in the Wiley School District where somehow a group got in and was passing out religious information
we talked about
during a lunch hour.
We talked about the Wiley East story last week. Oh, great point, Jim. Great point. Thank you for calling. Jeff in Cumbie, you're next up on WBAP. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I actually was in college back in the 90s to be an educator until I got kicked out because I wouldn't toe the line on some things. And 20 years ago, my wife and I decided to homeschool our children. Since that time, I've talked to a bunch of educators. I've worked in education, both at Region 10 in Dallas and also at Dallas County Schools before they went away. And what I can tell you is, and don't think I'm crazy, but back in the 50s, they were right about the communists and the socialists invading Hollywood, not only Hollywood, but education. The communists and the socialists took over education back in the 50s at the college level and have indoctrinated your teachers. And the younger the teacher, the more likely they're going to be a flaming liberal. And I'm not saying that as a Republican or a Democrat because I'm neither. I support the Libertarian Party and have not voted for a Democrat or a Republican in over 20 years.
Yeah, you're describing me. I've just had it with both parties. I think the Democrats are just off the wall, hair on fire, socialist monsters, and the Republicans are their enablers. As far as I'm concerned, neither one of these parties is any bit serious about balancing the budget or getting rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. None of them are serious about getting rid of the Department of Education. I want giant swaths of that federal government gone. I want the thing to be returned to what the Constitution said in Article 1, Section 8. And anything short of that is just going to continue to fail, Jeff. But thank you very much. I appreciate you calling in. My next guest, Logan Washburn from Dallas Express, probably has some hot opinions on this, and I've seen you cover a lot of these stories, and this is kind of tied because they're protesting the enforcement of our immigration laws. This is all one big messy soup of the Indianization of Frisco and Plano and Wiley and what was going on there last week with the ICE deportations. And your thoughts, are schools being honest with us when it comes to allowing or not allowing kids to protest?
I think that it's probably a mixed bag, like a lot of things. You have maybe administration doing one thing or saying one thing publicly, But on the ground, you actually have a lot of activist teachers in these schools. It's hard for these administrators to be in every classroom to see everything that's being taught to students. And if COVID taught us anything, it's that a lot of things were going on in the classroom that parents weren't aware of. And we only learned about that through virtual learning. And that sort of ignited this whole parental rights movement we're seeing today. Now, today, when you see all these walkouts to protest ICE, it's very important to keep in mind that this is not organic. This is stemming from individuals who are influencing students, and they're trying to use them for political ends.
Oh, definitely they're using them for political ends. Now, Governor Abbott says that the school districts are going to have to enforce the rules as they're written, and you don't get exceptions for political protest. But is there going to be any follow through on that?
Again, I think that's going to depend on the school, right? If they actually follow what the policies are, then you're going to see some order starting to be restored. But let me tell you, you're not seeing this happening at classical charter schools. You're not seeing this happening in institutions that actually have accountability measures. You are seeing these in a lot of the public high schools where they lack discipline and they have a hard time controlling students and just teaching them how to conduct themselves well. It's teaching them how to be respectful of others' time. When you're on school time, you're not being a political activist. Go do that after school, but not during school hours. And it all comes down to the fact that this is being used for political optics. This is not despite what people claim, this is not just students who care a lot and they're all getting together and wow, so inspiring. No, they're being used by activists.
Oh, absolutely. So let's tie this into the other hot button issue. I've seen some great reporting from you in the Dallas Express on the Islamification and the Indianification of Frisco and Plano. And, there was some meetings last week where things got heated. And I saw some of your reporting on that in a candidate forum as well. And I feel like these are all tied together.
Yeah, they absolutely are. I mean, in terms of general trends, right? You see this sort of marketing for outrage that a lot of these candidates have. They're just trying to rile crowds up and get people to get involved, especially in this primary stage of the race. Everyone is campaigning to an extent. And what we saw in the Epic Mosque, where they held the candidate forum, was that when a candidate brought up an issue that people disagreed with, rather than simply voicing concerns in a civil way, they all started shouting. The congregants of the Epic Mosque started yelling and shouting him down. There was an instance where several men had to restrain another man from getting up and
hang on. Did I get this audio from you? This is from Vaziri, right? Is that what you're talking about? Okay, let me play this real quick.
Wherever it is. I called out Valentina Gomez for calling all Muslims, dirty names and being a complete bigot and trying to get social media followers. I speak the truth. But I also want to say, as someone whose entire family is Muslim, I'm not down with Sharia law. Sharia law says that women on that side of the room are worth half as much as men. Do you all agree with that? No, that's not true. That is true. That is 100% true. If I'm wrong, Sharia law says women are worth half as much as men. That is 100% true. That is 100% true. And I'll talk about ICE.
All right. Thank you very much for that audio, Logan Washburn from the Dallas Express. Where do we go from here? I hear the governor saying he's going to push back against schools that allow protests. I hear the governor saying and Ken Paxton saying that they're going to do everything they can to stop these Sharia cities. But I feel like we're losing this battle, Logan.
Yeah, I think you're right in many ways. We are constrained, obviously, because people rightly want to follow the law. It's very important. You've got freedom of speech, freedom of religion. All these things are in place. And so people are, I think, admirably holding to those guidelines, which is a very helpful thing. But what we need to start doing is looking at the statutes that are already on the books, that are within the bounds of the Constitution, where we can just enforce existing law. And school policy as well is something that they really need to be looking into, because On the state level, you have regulations, but you also have district level rules, and those need to be enforced. So it takes everyone on these different levels actually getting involved and enforcing the laws we have on the books. The Constitution itself with these Sharia cities, it already has a supremacy clause saying that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And that cannot be violated by these sort of enclaves that center around Sharia law. So we need to start looking at these things and actually enforcing them.
Okay, well, great reporting again. Logan Washburn from the Dallas Express. How do we find your work online?
Thanks for having me on. It's great joining as always.
Yeah, follow him on Twitter/X. And if you go to DallasExpress.com, the story we just talked about is pinned as the top story. So you can read more about that there. I have some great callers lined up who are talking about issues with public schools allowing protests and teaching your kids that ICE is bad. I don't care if it does match my political ideology. You're 14. You don't know anything about the world, much less have an opinion that the rest of the world should even have any weight in whatsoever. And that's no offense to you. You're 14. You're not supposed to know anything. And here's the way I explain it to my kids, because this is the way I explained it to myself when I was a kid. I remember, people try and politicize you when you're 16, 17, and you're in high school. Even when I was in college, my response was, I don't know enough about the world for adults to have any respect for my opinion, and I'm okay with that. And I realized that, like, when I was 16, it was just like 4 or 5 years ago. I was playing with He-Man action figures and Legos and Ninja Turtles and watching cartoons. And look how far I've come in 5 years. Well, this process isn't calcified when you're 16. And I used to think, well, how different am I going to be 5 years from now when I'm 21? And then how much smarter am I going to be 5 years after that when I'm 26? And so maybe by the time I get to around my parents' age and I've actually experienced life, I don't know, maybe gotten married and had a kid and gotten a mortgage and had a career, or maybe made one paycheck in my entire life, then maybe people should start putting a little more stock into what I think. But I used to even look to the left and my right and tell my peer group, no one should care what we think. No one should have any weight on what our opinion is on public affairs. We know nothing. And that's okay. Just like it's okay that a 4-year-old doesn't know how to drive a car. But we definitely don't know how to run a country. We still live with our parents. Thank you very much. But no, they must gas these kids up. You're on the right side of history. Things that you do can change the world. There's suffering people out there and you can do something about it. Oh, stop it. Having a hissy fit in the street doesn't improve anybody's life. John in Fort Worth, you're on WBAP. Hey, John.
Hey, I was in high school back in the early 80s, and we had a little bit of that, politics and environmental stuff. I mean, but that was still, back then, that was considered lame. That was kind of like old hippie stuff. I think one of them, we had probably 3 walkouts during that time, maybe for an hour or so. I think one, if I try to think back, I think one was about the ozone. I think we were all going to die by 1988. That's still to be seen, of course. Everything's going to flood and poisoned by radiation. Nevertheless, I think I would be somewhat of a hypocrite if I didn't support protest in some way, because of like 2 major factors. For me as a teenager, and maybe some other people wasn't, thinking like I was thinking, if you had study hall or PE when they wanted to do a walkout, it wasn't really that big of a deal. But if you could have got me out of math, English, or science class for over an hour, oh my God, I would take that in a New York minute.
Yeah, well, I'm even more degenerate than you, John. If I'm going to skip class, I am not going to waste it at a protest. Me and the boys are going to the lake. My friend Jeff has a boat. There's going to be girls there. Bathing suits will be involved. Magic might happen. Who knows? But
yes,
yeah,
but think the number one reason for me and a lot of my friends was an hour. outside in front of the school. Now, it wasn't
absolutely. Absolutely.
By the cops or by the media or anything, but you had over an hour to scam on all the girls.
Right. All right. Me and John in Fort Worth probably got along just fine when we were in high school. Eric in McKinney, you're on WBAP. Go.
Hey, James, it was nice to meet you a couple months ago at the Medal of Honor Museum, but you got me to go to the internet and look up McKinney High School since I'm in McKinney, and the worst performing McKinney High is 52% math, 54% reading, 97% graduation rate. The best school in McKinney North, 68% math, 67% reading, 96% graduation rate. And this is rated, one of the best schools in Texas. Where the best McKinney can do is 68% math and 67% reading with a 96% graduation rate. You're right. There's a total disconnect between graduation and performance.
Okay, listen, before we had public schools, just digest this. None of us know of the time before that. We can only read about it in retrospect because my parents had public schools, our grandparents had public schools. But before public schools were a thing about 100 years ago, when a kid graduated high school and he was going to go into college, I remember it was like 2 months ago, I read the entrance requirements to get into Columbia, which is like an Ivy League school now, but it was just a regular school back in the day because there wasn't a whole lot of schools or a whole lot of people clamoring to go to school. You had to be able to read Virgil in Latin, like in the native language as Virgil wrote it.
Right.
And nowadays, the incoming freshman class of Columbia or just any of these colleges, how many of them even know who Virgil is, much less what language it could possibly even be in? How many of our graduating high school seniors can even read Latin? 4? So the standards have come down so low that, I noticed this, and not to make fun of my old hometown, but when I was going to Bug Tussle, we had some really stupid kids in there. And look, I'm not making fun of them. It's just when you have, my graduating class was like 180, 190 people. Whenever you have that, some of them are going to be dumb. Some of them are going to be below average. I mean, mathematically speaking, half of them are going to be below average. And when I saw some of these absolute booger-eating window lickers graduating, I lost all respect. I was like, well, I guess this piece of paper means absolutely nothing. They're just handing these people out to anyone who can sit through class without getting arrested, I suppose. David in Arlington, you're on WBAP.
Hey, yeah. Actually, I'm in Fort Worth now. I was waiting, but I just wanted to give you another kind of viewpoint. So I'm 50. I've been teaching for almost 20 years now, and I've taught in mostly Deep East Texas, and I just moved up here, and I've taught in the DFW area, 2 different schools. I don't see what you're talking about. Like, what I mean, I know what you're talking about, but I have never seen that in 20 years. Now, I did see a superintendent in Deep East Texas who allowed a Christian group to come in and distribute Christian comic books, telling the kids that because they were depressed, they were going to hell. Things like that.
Okay.
Now, I'm libertarian. I'm Christian. I've had them my entire life, come from a military family. But activism is only about going to be an activist. You have to have differing views. So there's no activism if all you do is say activism's only good if it's for this one ideology, because then there is no activism. It's just people agreeing with you. So I don't know. I just thought I could offer a different perspective. And our school walked out today. Did we stop them? No. Did we tell them they were going to be in trouble? Yes.
Are they going to be punished like if they just skipped school for any other day?
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
I'm all on board with that. But that's not
cameras.
That's not what was being reported by parents in Plano last week. An email went out to some of them, and they were being told that, hey, we let the kids walk out today, and as long as they followed the rules, there's no punishment or anything for it. We figured this was a good learning opportunity. And then they changed their tune by Wednesday of last week. And there's also a level of duplicity in there that bothers some people. But in your entire teaching career, have you ever seen a teacher have sex with a student?
Yes.
Oh, you've seen that?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. Yes,
but you haven't heard about
I actually replaced a teacher who was in trouble, who was texting a student and saying, "Come to my room so we can have sex." So I've seen that. I've seen that in the schools. I've seen coaches who take advantage of their closeness with.
But you've just heard the stories, but you haven't heard the stories about the teachers who are pushing gender ideology. You haven't heard that. You heard the ones about the sex, but you haven't heard that. I think there's a little selective admission there, but I do appreciate you calling, David in Arlington. Thank you very much, everyone, for hanging out today. The next Parker Pour is coming up at the Omni Fort Worth Hotel a week from tomorrow. You got it? Next Thursday, I'm going to be at the Omni Fort Worth Hotel, live James show from 2 to 5, happy hour from 5 to 7. Come on out. I would love to meet you. If you don't know where it's at, ask your phone. It's right across from the Fort Worth Convention Center, but your phone can take you right there. So Parker's Pour next Thursday, not tomorrow, next Thursday, Omni Fort Worth Hotel. The bar at the bottom is called Whiskey and Rye. Come on out and see me. I'd love to meet you. I'm James Parker. Mark Levin's coming up next on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The James Show Podcast.